Across centuries, Ethiopia rose as an unbroken empire, trading with Rome, repelling Italian invasion at Adwa in 1896 with 70,000 troops, and guiding African diplomacy, before internal crises ignited a revolution and civil war that nearly dissolved the state. Today, it stands again as a regional power, but the route from empire to chaos to resurgence defies simple explanation. What forces shaped this transformation? Long before the modern state took shape, the Axumite Kingdom dominated the highlands of northern Ethiopia. From the 1st to 7th centuries CE, Aksum controlled Red Sea trade routes, sending gold, ivory, and frankincense to Rome and India. Coins bearing the names of Aksumite kings, written in Greek and Ge'ez, traveled far beyond the Horn of Africa. By the 4th century, Aksum had adopted Christianity, establishing one of the world's oldest continuous Christian traditions. Centuries later, in 1270, Yakuno Amlak claimed descent from King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, founding the Solomonic Dynasty. This assertion of sacred lineage anchored Ethiopia's monarchy for nearly 700 years, shaping its imperial identity as a Christian stronghold surrounded by Islamic sultanates. The Solomonic rulers presided over a patchwork of regions, each governed by powerful nobles, but the idea of an unbroken royal line gave the empire a sense of unity that survived centuries of internal strife. During the late 19th century, regional warlords vied for control in a period known as the Age of Princes. The empire's cohesion frayed until a new wave of centralization began under Tewodros II and Johannes IV. It was Menelik II, however, who transformed Ethiopia's fortunes. Menelik expanded the empire's borders south and west, forging a multi-ethnic state. In 1896, facing Italian invasion at Adwa, Menelik mobilized approximately 70,000 Ethiopian troops. Using rapid communications, local guides, and careful coordination among commanders, his army outmaneuvered and defeated a better-equipped Italian force of 17,000. The victory at Adwa forced Italy to recognize Ethiopia's independence and define the nation's modern borders. Menelik's rule and the memory of Adwa became enduring symbols of Ethiopian resilience and anti-colonial legitimacy. Haile Selassie's reign, beginning in 1930, introduced sweeping efforts to modernize Ethiopia's state and its place in the world. The 1931 Constitution, the first of its kind for the country, established a parliament and set out to limit the power of regional nobles. While real authority remained with the emperor, the document laid the groundwork for centralized administration and legal reform. Haile Selassie championed education, founding new schools and sending students abroad for training in law, science, and engineering. Road construction and the expansion of postal and telegraph services connected distant provinces to the capital, supporting both economic growth and state oversight. Ethiopia's international profile rose sharply during these years. In 1923, the country became the first African nation admitted to the League of Nations, affirming its sovereignty at a time when most of the continent was under colonial rule. Haile Selassie used this platform to press for the abolition of slavery and to advocate for collective security in the face of external threats. His diplomatic efforts continued after the trauma of Italian occupation from 1935 to 1941. Returning to power with British support, he steered Ethiopia into the United Nations as a founding member and, in 1963, hosted the inaugural summit of the Organization of African Unity in Addis Ababa. These moves positioned Ethiopia as a voice for African independence and cooperation. Yet, beneath the surface, the promise of constitutional reform and international prestige masked growing social and economic strains. The benefits of modernization and global engagement were uneven, often bypassing rural communities and reinforcing old hierarchies. The expectation set by Haile Selassie's reforms would, by the 1970s, come under mounting pressure from a new generation demanding deeper change. In 1974, after months of strikes and mutinies, a committee of junior officers known as the Derg seized power in Addis Ababa. The imperial government collapsed almost overnight. Emperor Haile Selassie was arrested and held in secret, his fate hidden from the public. The monarchy was abolished by decree the following year. Mengistu Haile Mariam, a colonel from the Derg's inner circle, soon emerged as the regime's central figure. He consolidated control through mass arrests and the execution of more than 60 former officials, an event that silenced any remaining opposition from the old order. The Derg declared Ethiopia a Marxist-Leninist state and launched sweeping land and industry nationalizations. Political violence escalated into the period known as the Red Terror. Between 1977 and 1978, defense squads and local militias, acting on Derg orders, carried out mass arrests, torture, and executions in cities across the country. Independent investigations estimate that between 15,000 and 150,000 people, most of them young urban residents, were killed or disappeared. Victims' names were read aloud in public squares or broadcast on state radio. Bodies were left in the streets as warnings, and families were forbidden to claim them. At the same time, Ethiopia faced a devastating famine. From 1983 to 1985, drought, forced resettlement, and military campaigns against insurgents in the north combined to produce a humanitarian disaster. International agencies estimate that nearly 1 million people died. The Derg's attempts to control information and restrict aid access deepened the crisis. By the late 1980s, insurgent groups like the Eritrean People's Liberation Front and the Tigray People's Liberation Front advanced steadily. In May 1991, as rebel forces closed in on the capital, Mengistu fled to Zimbabwe. The Derg regime collapsed, leaving behind a shattered society and a desperate need for a new political order. The collapse of the Derg left Ethiopia deeply fractured, but by 1995, a new constitutional order took hold. The Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia was established, dividing the country into 9 ethnically defined regional states and 2 chartered cities. Each region gained the right to its own government, flag, and language policy. Article 39 of the Constitution went further, granting every nation and nationality the legal right to self-determination, including secession. Supporters argued this system recognized Ethiopia's diversity and offered long marginalized groups a stake in national life. Critics warned it risked deepening divisions and fueling future disputes. Prime Minister Meles Zenawi, who led the new government, championed a state-led development model. His administration prioritized large-scale infrastructure, roads, dams, and new industrial parks, while keeping banking, telecom, and energy under state control. The Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, launched in 2011, became a centerpiece of this vision. Between 2004 and 2015, Ethiopia's GDP grew at an average of nearly 10% per year, one of the fastest rates in the world. Poverty rates dropped from 44% in 2000 to under 24% by 2015. Yet, most Ethiopians still depended on agriculture, and regional disparities persisted. A new era began in 2018 when Abiy Ahmed rose to power. He released thousands of political prisoners, legalized opposition groups, and loosened controls on the press. Announcing plans to open key sectors to private and foreign investment, Abiy signaled a break from decades of tight state management. In 2019, he received the Nobel Peace Prize for brokering a peace agreement with Eritrea, ending a long military stalemate. These reforms generated optimism, but also unleashed new political pressures that would soon test the country's fragile unity. Drone strikes in October 2021 demonstrated the federal government's renewed military reach, shifting the balance in the Tigray conflict. By November 2022, the Pretoria Agreement brought an end to major hostilities, opening the door for reconstruction and diplomatic outreach. With the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam delivering its first electricity to neighboring countries in 2024, Ethiopia positioned itself as a regional energy supplier. That same year, Ethiopia joined BRICS, expanding its influence among emerging global economies. The country's peacekeeping forces continued deployments across Africa, while GDP rebounded to nearly $170 billion and exports surpassed $4 billion. Electricity access climbed above 53%, reflecting rapid infrastructure recovery. State institutions leveraged these gains to project stability and ambition, cementing Ethiopia's role as a driver of regional integration and a central player in African diplomacy. Ethiopia's rapid progress faces persistent headwinds. Inflation hovered near 28% in early 2024, straining household budgets and complicating government planning. With a population now exceeding 125 million, the demands on schools, healthcare, and jobs grow each year. The defense budget stands at $1.4 billion, reflecting ongoing security challenges that compete with investments in development. Ethnic federalism, designed to manage diversity, remains a source of tension, fueling periodic unrest in regions like Amhara and Oromia. Climate risk compounds these pressures. Droughts and erratic rainfall threaten food security for millions, especially in rural areas reliant on rain-fed agriculture. Policy institutions must balance immediate needs with long-term stability, as macroeconomic risks and demographic pressures test the resilience of Ethiopia's federal system. In 2024, Ethiopia's population surpasses 125 million, making it the second most populous nation in Africa. This documentary has shown how Ethiopia moved from the Axumite Kingdom and its ancient trade routes through the 1896 victory at Adwa with 70,000 Ethiopian troops, to the modern era, surviving imperial collapse, the Red Terror that claimed tens of thousands of lives, and famine that killed around 1 million people in the 1980s. The 1995 Constitution established ethnic federalism, enabling a decade of nearly 10% annual GDP growth. Yet, questions remain. The full extent of classified wartime documents from the Tigray conflict is still unknown, and the long-term impact of federal reforms continues to be debated by scholars. Today, Ethiopia generates power from the 6,450 megawatt GERD and joined BRICS in 2024, but faces inflation at 28% and ongoing ethnic tensions. The evidence shows that Ethiopia's state resilience and regional influence are rooted in centuries of adaptation, but its next chapter depends on how it manages unresolved internal pressures and the demands of a growing nation.